Hey, welcome back everyone. Today we're going to see how to create a new projectile, a new weapon, and a new weapon component. It's going to be a little bit confusing because we have been using the one from Unreal from the beginning, from the first-person shooter. So it's worked a little bit different. So it's why we have to create three different things to just having one weapon. So first, we're going to try to make that easy. So we're going to go to our blueprint, first person folder here, blueprint. And you can see me, it's already created. So we're going to take the projectile here. We're going to right click and create a child of it. We're going to name that child the red projectile, as you can see here on the screen. I'm going to repeat the same process for the pickup rifle. Right click, create a child. And we have the pickup rifle, and I'm going to call this weapon red. Repeat the same process for the weapon component. Right click, child, and I'm going to call this one the red component. Okay, so now that we have all that created, it's going to be just a little bit easier to follow along. Okay, so I'm just going to move that out of the way first. So we're going to jump in our first person projectile. So not the first person projectile, sorry, the pickup rifle. I'm just going to put it here. So the pickup rifle is this one here. So the basic weapon that we've been using since the beginning. And in it here, you can see that's the code. There's no modification whatsoever. Okay, I just wanted to show you the difference here. Okay, so we don't need this one anymore. So we're going to jump in the red one that we just created. So now we are in the red one. So technically when you open it, you won't have this here, but I'll show you how to reach that point. First, we're going to click on the sphere collision. Sorry, the skeleton mesh. And we're going to change the color of that weapon so we don't get confused. And here you can see I have red. If you click here on the browse icon, it's going to bring you to this component here. Not this component, but this material, which is the original one. We're going to right click and create a material instance of it. And we can leave the normal name. We're going to open it. And when we open it, we have access to the body color here that we can just click and change the color that we want. And I'm going to put that red because I named the other thing red. And we're going to save this as soon as I can put red here. Oh, here we go. Perfect. So now I'm going to save that. I'm going to exit. If we go back to our pickup rifle red, we can now click on our skeleton mesh and we can now select that material. We can select the red one that we just created. So technically you have the normal one right here and you can just take the red one here. So now if you go in the viewport, you can see that your weapon is now red instead of gray or black, depending on the color that you have. Okay, so now your weapon, this weapon is good. So we're going to go to the event graph. And here you can see that I have some code here. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to override the parent class for the onComponent begin overlap. So how to do this? Well, first we're going to click on the collision sphere. We're going to right click and we're going to add an event and we're going to select the onComponent begin overlap. And now when you do that, you should have that on your screen. Now to make that a little bit easier, we're going to go back to our pickup rifle and we're just going to copy all that code here. Just Control C and go back to your red rifle and Control V and just plug everything back together. Okay. When we go to our code here, we have our blueprint weapon component, the child red component. So you should have this one here. So the add blueprint weapon component. So in our red rifle, we're going to remove it and replace that with the add weapon component or red component. And we're going to plug everything back together and we're all good with that. Okay. So because we're here, we're going to go in our weapon component or red. So for me is this one right here. So I'm just going to go there. Just going to replace my stuff so we don't get confused here. Just give me a second. Okay, so we have the basic one. So the normal weapon component, the basic one that we just did a little modification in it. And here in the basic one, we're going to drag from class and promote to variable. And we're going to call that projectile class. Okay. And we're going to compile and save, make sure everything is plugged together. By doing this, when we go back to our red child, make sure that we compile first. We're going back to our red child component. Now, when we open it, we have access to all the same setting that we have in our weapon component. If we go down here, we have the projectile class now. Under the projectile class, we have to select the red projectile class that we created. So by default, you should have the normal projectile class. Now we're just going to select the red one that we created at the beginning. And we should be all good with that. Now we're going to go to our first person projectile. So this one here. Okay. So we're going to go to the event graph, and the damage will be handled by this projectile. Okay. So we're going to go from even begin play. If you don't have it, you can just right click and even begin play and just select even begin play. We're going to drag from it and we're going to call apply damage. We're going to create a variable here by clicking on it, and we're going to call that variable projectile damage, and we're going to make sure that it's a float. We're going to plug that together, and the base damage, when we compile, we can change the default value to 5. And when we have that done, we're all set for the basic projectile. Okay. So now we're going to go to our second projectile that we did, which is the red one. Okay. So we have that interface here. Just in case you don't have that interface, you can always go to Windows, Layout, and load the classic layout. And it's going to bring you to a page like this. Okay. So if we go down here, we have all the same setting that we have in the basic projectile. Okay. So it's all the same thing. There's absolutely no difference for that. Okay. So what we're interested in is this value here, the projectile damage. Because it's a new projectile, need to do a little bit more damage, depending on what you try to achieve. So now we're going to go to the projectile damage that is right here and going to write the number 10 in it instead of 5. And we're going to compile and save all of that together. Okay. So now we did, just not getting confused, we're going to go back to our first person folder with a blueprint. We created a new projectile, a new weapon, and a new blueprint weapon, which we modify everything that we had to modify in it. Okay. As you may remember, the damage is handled by that projectile now, not by the AI anymore. So we're going to go to our AI, and we're going to go to our AI on hit damage and call even health. We're going to do a little modification to it. From the on component box here, we're going to drag and we're going to cast to our first person projectile that we have right here. We're going to take the object and connect that to the other actor. From the as blueprint first person projectile, we're going to drag and we're going to search for our projectile damage, and we're going to plug our projectile damage to the base one and just continue everything with the code. I have a print string here just to show in the top corner when we play that it's doing 5 or 10 damage depending on the weapon we have. Now if we go back to map, the only thing we have to do now is taking our weapon here and just put it in our level so we can test it. Okay. So technically, if you did follow everything, you should be able to have 2 weapons on the floor right now, 2 different color, and those weapons will do a different damage. Okay. So you already see it when I did it. So we have 10 here, and the first weapon I mean, and is doing 5 damage. And if I was taking the red one, it's doing 10 damage, okay? The only inconvenience now is that if we take the gun there, we have double gun here, right? Because we can use both at the same time, okay? So there's a way in another video, I'm going to make sure that we can only have one weapon at a time. But for now, you could always put that new weapon to another map, or just play with this one instead of play with the basic one. It's as you want, obviously. So on this, I will catch you on the next video. Hey, welcome back everyone. Today we're going to see how we can only pick up one weapon. So let's jump right into it. So I'm going to show you exactly what we're going to do. As you can see here, I'm picking up the first weapon and I'm unable to pick up the other weapon. When I shoot, I only have one bullet that go out, which is the one that do 5 damage. So we're going to do that again, and this time I'm going to take the red gun, and you can see now I'm doing 10 damage, and we know I have the red gun, and if I try to pick up the black one, it's not working, and if I shoot, I only shoot the red bullet. So very simple to do. First, we're going to have to modify a few things. Okay, so we're going to go to our BP pickup rifle, which is our basic weapon rifle that we have been using, that the one that when we walk over the collision box here, we are able to go over our sequence and cast to our character. Forget about that, we're going to do that in a minute. And we are adding that weapon component to our character, and we're going here and destroy the actor. So as you can see, there's few modification that you don't have, so we're gonna make sure that you can do that. First, I want to make sure that everyone can have the rotating rifle. As you can see here, when I do play, the rotation of the rifle is turning, so I forget to include that in a previous video. So I'm going to show you how to do that very quickly. So you're just going to select your pickup rifle, you're just going to add, search, and you're going to search for a rotation. You have here, so rotating movement. You're going to add this, which is already here for me. And now you're just going to rotate and change the number here to rotate it how you want. Okay, so you can play with those settings and achieve different goal. So, but just for this example, you put 180, so it's going to rotate at the speed that you saw earlier. Okay, so with that out of the way, we're going to jump to the event graph. So in the event graph, the modification that I did is a little bit something not very big, but it's helping us to make sure we only pick up one weapon. As you can see here, it's already done, so we're going to read that together. So it's going to confirm is as weapon, which is our boolean here in the player character. So we're going to create this boolean in our player character, is set to true or not. Okay, true or false. If it's true, the code will stop here, so it's not going to go through the rest of the logic. If it's not true, it's mean that we do not have a weapon and we'll be able to proceed with the rest of the code. Okay, so with that explained, we're gonna go to our player character, which is the one that we have been using from the beginning. Okay, so this big one here, we're gonna create a new variable, and this variable would be called as weapon. Gonna make sure it's a boolean. Okay, and you can compile. And here you can see the default value is set to uncheck, which is going to be false for now. Okay, we have nothing to do here other than creating this variable. We are going to go back to our pickup rifle, and it's where we're going to start to do our code. Okay, so we're going to put our branch right after we set our variable for our cast player. Okay, so we're going to drag from it and we're going to search for branch, or it can all be on the keyboard and do a branch. If you drag from here, as you created the as weapon variable, you should be able to access it. So if you type as weapon, you should be able to access the one we just created. So we're going to take this one here. I'm going to make sure it's plugged like this to the branch, and make sure to the condition like so. I'm going to make sure that we have all the target the same, so it's why I'm taking my time, so make sure you can see exactly what is happening here. Here we're going to create a new variable, which is going to be this one. So to make that easier, we're going to search for this first. So we're going to right click and just search for switch. Okay, switch on integer. But instead, we're going to search for switch on name. And I'm going to take the name here. And as you can see, that's exactly the same. When that is created, you're going to save and compile. You're going to click on switch on name. And here on the top, you're going to click twice on the plus. The first will be called basic weapon. And the index one will be called red weapon. When that is done, we're going to compile on the top here. Okay, so now we're going to drag from selection and we're going to promote that to a variable. This variable will be called weapon names, and we're going to save and compile. Make sure that the one in the basic weapon, so the pickup rifle, this one here, is set by default to basic weapon. Okay, because we're going from basic weapon here. If you don't put it there, you're going to have to go through default here. But I just want to keep that very simple. So we're going to make sure that we name that variable basic weapon. And we're going to compile. We're going to move a little bit on the side here and add our weapon component. This time, we're going to make sure that for the red weapon, instead of adding this one, we're going to add this one here. Okay, so the red one, so the child that we created. Make sure that the target is connected to our player character here. And we shall be all good to go for this little part. So just make sure it's plugged like this. And we're going to move on the side here. So as soon as we pick up that weapon from the ground, we're going to set our boolean as weapon to true in our player character. So we're going to take our reference to our player character, which we already created at the beginning previously a while back. So this one here. So we're going to take this variable. So I'm just moving on the side here. And we're going to take it from the panel here and just drag and drop here. Okay. And when we set that variable, so now we're going to be able to search for as weapon, and we're going to do a set, which is going to give us exactly this. Okay, we're going to make sure that we are putting a check in that box, and we can plug the rest here into our destroy actor. Okay, this was just forcing that the weapon has been picked up. Okay, but technically you don't need this little part. Okay, so we're going to go through that once more. Just make sure we are getting it. So when our character is walking over that sphere collision, which is that red one here, is going to that sequence. It's going to cast to our player character, which is this character here. Okay, it's going to set a variable. Now we're going to that branch. The branch will confirm if we have a weapon or not. So if the player has a weapon or not, which it's the variable we created here. Okay, by default is character does not have a weapon. We're going to plug all that together. Now we're going to a switch on integer, which is a switch on name. The basic name for our weapon name here will be basic weapon. And the second one will be our red weapon. We're just moving out of the side here, which mean that if we are picking up the rifle, which is this one here that we're currently in, will be name basic weapon. It means it's going to go through this one. When we're going to set the name in our red pickup rifle, it's going to go through this one. Okay. So now we're in the basic. So it's going to go through the first one here. So the basic weapon is going to create that weapon component that we have from the beginning. We're going to move on the side. When that is created, we're taking the reference to our player. Make sure that we tell the game our player do have a weapon at this time, and we're destroying this actor. Okay. Same principle apply. If we pick up the red weapon instead, it's going to cast to our child component, which is the red one. Gonna same thing, able to set that variable that is in the player character. So our player that we're currently using, this one here I'm talking about, and set that to already have a weapon, and we're gonna destroy this actor. Okay, so now that that is out of the way, we're gonna go to our pickup rifle. And here, remember in the previous video I made you do some calculation here, but we won't need that anymore, which is right here. As you can see here, I left it there so you can see it. Okay, we don't need that anymore, so technically we can take all that and remove it. Okay, as our master pickup rifle is handling now all the weapon. Okay, so if we do have more weapon, we can just add names, and the weapon we create, just give them a name, and we're all set. Okay, so we're gonna go to our pickup rifle rename, the pickup rifle that is the red one, which is this one here. Okay, and we have the weapon name here. You can see that I change it to red weapon, but by default, if you did compile this one first, when you go back to your red one, you should have basic weapon here. So we're going to change that for red weapon. Now the name of that weapon is red weapon. Okay, so when we go back to our pickup rifle, as we have the red weapon, if we walk on the red weapon to pick it up from the ground, it's going to confirm which name we have. Is it basic or red? Well, it's going to be red this time, so it's going to go to red. We're going to create a component for red, and we're going to proceed with the rest of the code. Okay, so if we try that, obviously it's going to work because I already did it, but technically for you, you should be able to only pick up one rifle at the time and not being able to pick up the other rifle. Okay, so I want to make sure that we're getting that. So first we're creating a variable for as weapon in our player character. After that, we modify a few things in our pickup rifle, which is the basic one. Okay, we created that, make sure that we do this code. That's the big difference that we added with this little one here and this little one here. I could even change that to red just so you can see the big difference. So the two major thing that we change is this one here and this one here, and we just added an extra one here, and all the code what we previously add in our red pickup weapon is now all gone, as we don't need it anymore. Okay, and our player obviously has a as weapon. Okay, the only reason why we are putting the as weapon in our player is that when we finish the code with picking up a weapon, what is happening is that we're destroying the actor. So if we were putting the variable, the boolean as weapon in that blueprint, it will be destroyed at the end of the pickup. So with that, you should be all set. So on this, I will catch you on the next one.